They fired me after 20 years. No warning, no conversation, nothing. Just a cold, heartless email. But what they didn't know is that I knew their biggest secret. And once I used it, everything changed. Hey, if you're into stories where the underdog bites back and justice gets served with a side of sweet revenge, you're in the right place. Hit that like button, share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe for more true stories that'll make your jaw drop. Now let me take you back to the beginning. Before I became the former employee they tried to erase, I worked at that company for 2 decades. Not months, not years. Decades. I watched it grow from a dusty little office with flickering lights to a glossy, high-rise empire. I was there through every chaotic Monday, every overtime weekend, every missed birthday and holiday. I gave them everything. And you know what I got in return? A cold email. Effective immediately, your position has been terminated due to restructuring. Thank you for your service. No handshake, no meeting, no decency. I just stared at the screen, heart pounding like a drum in a war zone. It didn't make sense. I hadn't missed a deadline in years. I trained half the department. I covered for my manager when he was too hungover to show up. And now, just thrown away like garbage? At first I was hurt. It felt like someone had pulled the ground out from under me. But then, that hurt turned into fire. A wildfire. Because as I sat there stunned, I remembered something. Something they clearly forgot. Something that could turn their shiny little world upside down. See, there's power in being invisible. When people stop noticing you, they start talking freely around you. Like you're furniture, like you're not even human. And over the years I had heard a lot of things. Quiet deals, sketchy emails, passwords scribbled on sticky notes, secrets whispered in the break room. And there was one secret in particular, one they never should have let me hear. But we'll get there. First, let me tell you who I was before I became their worst nightmare. I started working there when I was barely 23, fresh out of community college, hopeful, maybe even a little naive. Back then, the place felt like a family. My manager at the time, Mr. Gates, yeah, that was his real name, used to bring donuts every Friday. We had monthly team lunches, inside jokes, Secret Santa. You felt seen. You felt like you mattered. But like mold creeping in under wallpaper, things started to rot slowly. The company grew, but the heart shrank. New leadership, new faces, younger hires with shiny degrees and inflated egos. Suddenly experience didn't matter anymore. It was all about metrics, buzzwords, and sucking up to the right people. I kept my head down. I did my job better than most of the kids running around calling themselves project managers. I was loyal, stupidly loyal. While others job-hopped and negotiated salaries, I stayed. I believed that hard work spoke louder than charm, that showing up every day meant something. Turns out it didn't. The warning signs were there, but I brushed them off, like when they moved my desk into a smaller, darker corner, or when they stopped inviting me to meetings I had once led. Or that one time my name got left off a company-wide announcement, even though I wrote the damn memo. I told myself I was overthinking. Maybe they were just busy. But then came Riley, that smug, fresh-out-of-business school kid they hired last year. Barely 30, always talking like he invented work-life balance. He got promoted after 3 months. And guess who he replaced? Yeah, me. No warning, no explanation. Just a reshuffle, they said. You're too valuable to move out of the team, they said. We need your expertise to support him during the transition. Support him. I had 20 years under my belt, and now I was being asked to carry some kid who didn't know the difference between a spreadsheet and a timesheet. But I swallowed it. Again. Because I thought if I just proved myself again, someone would notice. Someone would reward the loyalty. Instead, Riley started treating me like an assistant. No, worse. Like an old laptop that still technically worked, but didn't have the latest updates. He'd toss work my way with a half smile and call me buddy, like he was doing me a favor. I wanted to snap, but I didn't, because I remembered something Riley didn't know, something no one remembered. Years ago, during a server migration, I was part of the IT handover team. There was a folder, a locked one. No one knew what was in it, but the IT guy gave me admin access just in case anything went wrong. I never used it until now. And let me tell you, what I found in that folder, it was the kind of thing that destroys careers. that collapses companies, but I'll get to that. First, you need to see just how far they pushed me. It was a Thursday. You never forget the day your world collapses. I came in like any other morning, coffee in hand, earbuds in, nodding politely at people who now looked at me like I was part of the furniture. My desk was cleaner than usual, mostly because I stopped decorating it. What was the point? Around 10:37 a.m., I got the email. Subject: termination notice. Effective immediately. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I even chuckled. Must have clicked the wrong contact, I mumbled to myself. But as I read it again and again, that fire I mentioned before, it started to burn. They didn't even have the guts to call me in. No HR meeting, no dignity, just a digital bullet to the head. I walked straight into Riley's office. He looked up, feigning surprise like he hadn't just pulled the trigger himself. "Hey, man, I was just about to come find you," he said, like we were buddies grabbing a beer. I didn't speak. I just stared. Not at him, really, through him. That smug little smirk of his, the way he leaned back in the chair I used to sit in. It all clicked. "You knew?" I asked. He shrugged. "It's not personal, just a business decision." Not personal. That's what people say right before they gut you and walk away. I didn't scream, I didn't throw anything, I just nodded. That calm before a storm. Yeah, I was the storm, because I knew exactly what I was going to do next. On my way out, I used the excuse of grabbing my personal files to log into my old admin account. I hadn't used it in years, but IT never revoked it. Probably forgot I even had it. I found the folder within seconds. Q4 Confidential Archive. Back in the day, it was used to store pre-merger audits. But now, it had become their digital skeleton closet. I clicked through, emails between Riley and upper management, discussing off-the-books layoffs, misuse of company funds, falsified reports to investors, even evidence of a scheme to underpay junior staff while padding executive bonuses with the difference. It was poison, and I had the whole bottle. I downloaded everything, copies, screenshots, backups, sent it all to a private drive. Then I cleared my digital footprints like a ghost. As I walked out for the last time, no one looked up, no handshakes, no goodbye card. But I was smiling, because they thought they'd gotten rid of me. They had no idea I had just started. When I got home that day, I didn't cry. I didn't even sit down. I just stood in the middle of my living room, surrounded by silence, letting it all settle in. 20 years of loyalty thrown in the trash like expired milk. I was disposable to them. But now I was dangerous. I knew I had to be smart. One wrong move and they could flip the script, make me look like the bitter ex-employee with an axe to grind. No, this had to be surgical, clean, precise. I wasn't just going to get even. I was going to make it look like they did it to themselves. I spent the weekend combing through the files. It was like peeling layers off a rotten onion, each document stinkier than the last. Bribes, fake invoices, offshore accounts. They weren't just shady, they were criminal. But here's the kicker, one file stood out from the rest. It was an internal memo flagged for deletion but never fully purged. A note from Riley to the CFO titled, "Cost Cutting via Targeted Exits." It named specific employees, older, higher-paid ones, slated for removal under the guise of restructuring. My name was there, right next to a budget line labeled reallocation bonus. That's right, my firing was part of a payout plan for executives. They literally profited off kicking me to the curb. That's when the plan started writing itself. First, I compiled a clean, digestible report, dates, names, transactions, no emotion, just facts. I knew I couldn't go straight to HR. They were knee-deep in it. So I went to someone they couldn't touch. An old friend of mine who worked in finance journalism. We'll call her Lena. Lena owed me a favor from back in the day, and when I told her what I had, she practically begged me to go on the record. So I said no, I wasn't stupid. Let them burn without ever knowing who lit the match. She agreed. While she prepared the story, I took the second part of my plan into motion. I contacted several ex-colleagues who'd been let go under budget cuts. I showed them the memo. One of them burst into tears. Another cursed for 10 minutes straight. But all of them, furious, willing to speak out, willing to sue. The fire was catching. I anonymized everything. Sent packages to labor boards, legal watchdogs, and a few good Samaritans on social media who love a juicy takedown. I didn't need credit, I just needed impact. And within 2 weeks, the story broke. But what happened next? Oh, that's when it got interesting. The article dropped on a Wednesday morning, right around the same time most of the company was just settling into their desks with overpriced lattes and fake smiles. The headline? It hit like a brick through glass. Tech firm accused of targeted age discrimination and financial fraud. Anonymous source leaks internal documents. Lena didn't hold back. The report was meticulous. Dates, numbers, names, emails. She even included redacted screenshots of the worst offenses. Riley's memo. Front and center. It was a public undressing. They went from being the darling of the industry to a viral case study in corruption in under 6 hours. Social media erupted. Former employees started chiming in with their own stories. Discrimination, bullying, toxic leadership, threats of termination if they spoke up. LinkedIn became a war zone. X, was on fire. The company's official statement came out by noon. Vague, defensive, full of corporate fluff like restructuring and miscommunication. But the damage was done. Investors started pulling out. Their stock dropped 14% in one day. And the media, they smelled blood in the water. CNN picked up the story, then Business Insider. Even a late-night host made a joke about Riley, calling him Silicon Valley's favorite villain. I watched it all unfold from my couch, sipping coffee like it was fine wine. I didn't smile. I grinned. Not because they were hurting, but because justice for once wasn't just a word. It was happening. By Friday, Riley had stepped down, which is code for he got booted out the back door with a shredded reputation and probably a lawyer on speed dial. The CFO? Under investigation, HR, wiped clean. But that's not even the best part. Remember the ex-employees I contacted? They banded together, filed a class action lawsuit. With all the evidence I gave them, it was like walking into a courtroom with a bazooka. Settlements were inevitable. And me? I stayed quiet. Let them all guess who the anonymous source was. They never figured it out. Not even once. I was the ghost in their system, the shadow they ignored for 20 years. The same one who pulled the rug right out from under them. Justice wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy. It was silent, strategic, and absolute. But the story doesn't end here, because just when I thought it was over, I got a message from someone I never expected. 3 days after the story went viral, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Normally I'd ignore it, but something told me to answer. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe I just wanted to hear another executive squirm. "Is this the person who once sent the files?" a voice asked, cautious, like they were tiptoeing across broken glass. "Who's asking?" I replied, already knowing. I can't say, but I know what you did, and I'm not calling to report you. I'm calling because I want to talk." Turns out it was someone from the board of directors. Not just any member. Someone who had been silently fuming for years, watching the leadership rot the company from the inside out, but never having enough leverage to do anything. Until now. "I want to clean house," they said, "but I can't do it alone. You clearly know where the skeletons are buried and how to dig them up." It was surreal. 1 week I was jobless, humiliated, discarded. The next, I was being asked to become a kind of internal avenger. Not officially, of course, this was all quiet, off the books. But they were dead serious. "You have a mind for systems," they said, "and a memory sharper than any audit trail I've seen. We need someone like you on the inside to rebuild, properly this time." And here's the twist. I said no. Not because I didn't want to see it burn and rise again, but because I was done playing by other people's rules. I'd spent 20 years being the dependable cog in their machine. Now, I wanted to build my own. But I did offer them something. I told them I'd consult on my terms, on my schedule, for my price. They agreed faster than I expected, and just like that, I went from being unemployed to being indispensable. Not just to them, but to other companies who heard what I'd done. Whispers of a silent fixer who knew how to expose fraud, find corruption, and clean up messes no one else dared to touch. I didn't need a job anymore. I had a reputation, and sometimes that's worth more than any paycheck. But that's not even the final twist in this story, Because one morning as I was sipping coffee, scrolling headlines, feeling untouchable, I saw a face I hadn't seen in months. Riley, in handcuffs. There he was, on the morning news, looking like a shadow of the smug, self-satisfied man who used to strut around the office like he owned the place. No designer suit, no cocky grin, just a pale, nervous face under harsh police station lighting. Riley Graham, former executive of Stratix Solutions, arrested on charges of wire fraud, embezzlement and corporate conspiracy. I nearly dropped my coffee. Turns out, the emails I leaked were just the beginning. The authorities had launched a full-scale investigation, and when they dug deeper, they found things even I didn't know about. Hidden accounts, money funneled through dummy corporations, offshore partnerships with shell companies. Riley wasn't just a smug boss. He was a criminal in a tailored blazer. His trial made headlines for weeks. He tried to play the victim at first, claimed it was all a misunderstanding, a paperwork oversight. But prosecutors tore him apart. The memo with my name on it. It became Exhibit A. His tone-deaf texts, Exhibits B through Z. His private chats with the CFO were filled with phrases like, "We'll bury it, and they'll never find out." The court found him guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, with no chance of parole for the first 7. Watching him get led away in cuffs felt like poetic justice. Not because I hated him, but because for the first time, the system didn't protect the powerful. And the irony? He always thought he was untouchable. He laughed at the people he fired. He gloated when others cried. And now he was the one begging for mercy in a courtroom while reporters snapped photos like hungry wolves. I got messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Old co-workers, college friends, even a few executives who'd always played it safe, now emboldened by the downfall of the golden boy. "Did you see it?" they'd ask. Yeah, I saw it. And I wasn't done. Because Riley was just the beginning. The CFO? He was next. And there were others in other companies doing the same thing, using people up and spitting them out, pretending they were kings of some invisible empire built on exploitation and greed. But I had a new purpose now. I wasn't just the guy who got fired. I was the guy who fought back, who exposed them, who made the powerful sweat. And I wasn't about to stop now. Something changes in you after a victory like that. Not the kind you celebrate with balloons and champagne, but the kind that leaves you standing in silence, realizing you've become someone else. I wasn't just a former employee anymore. I was a man with a mission, a witness turned warrior. The fire they lit when they kicked me out, it hadn't burned out, it had evolved. It was no longer just about revenge. It was about justice, not just for me, but for everyone who'd been crushed under the heels of arrogant executives who thought their money made them invincible. So I started something new. At first it was just a blog, anonymous. A place to document what happened, using code names, redacted emails, and stories from others like me. I called it the Back Room, a digital alley where corporate secrets came to die. Within weeks, it went viral. People from all over the country started submitting their own stories. Teachers, nurses, warehouse workers, tech professionals, different industries, same sickness, exploitation, abuse, betrayal. They shared emails, contracts, pay stubs, evidence of how they were lied to, used, discarded. And I started connecting the dots, seeing patterns, realizing this wasn't isolated, it was systemic. So I took it further. I partnered with whistleblower lawyers, labor rights advocates, and former investigators. Quietly, strategically. We formed a network, a kind of underground syndicate for justice. We didn't wear masks or capes. We used facts, evidence, and the internet. Our goal was simple: expose the rot, protect the workers, burn the masks. We helped people build cases, leak stories, navigate retaliation. And the best part, we never took a cent up front. We only won when they did. Companies started getting nervous. You could see it in their HR memos, suddenly filled with softer language and wellness initiatives. They didn't know where the next leak would come from. They didn't know that their janitor or their front desk clerk might be one of us. And me? I found peace in the chaos. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I was focused. Because every time I helped someone bring down a corrupt leader, I felt it. Not just satisfaction, redemption. I was no longer working for a paycheck. I was working for payback. And if they thought what I did to Riley was impressive, they hadn't seen anything yet. While Riley was rotting in a cell and the company scrambled to rebuild what was left of their broken empire, I already had my sights set on the next name on the list, Clark Evans, the former CFO. If Riley was the face of arrogance, Clark was the shadow behind the curtain. He rarely spoke in meetings, but everyone knew he pulled the strings. He was the kind of guy who smiled without showing teeth, cold, calculated, quietly cruel. And the more I dug, the more I saw just how deep his fingerprints ran in the entire operation. While Riley played the reckless frontman, Clark was laundering bad decisions into quarterly profits. He crafted the severance scams, moved funds between fake departments, and even created shell vendor accounts to funnel company money into private accounts. I had the receipts, literally. But this wouldn't be public. I didn't want another media circus. This time I wanted him to know it was me. I mailed a plain black envelope to his home address, no return label. Inside, just a USB drive and a handwritten note. You don't remember me, but I remember everything. The drive held a curated selection of his greatest hits, internal emails, fake invoices, asset transfers to Cayman accounts, all linked, dated, and sorted. A digital confession he never gave. The next day I watched from a distance as his world cracked open. His lawyer showed up first, then an emergency board meeting, then word got out he was taking a leave of absence. But Clark knew. He knew he wasn't dealing with the press or HR now. He was dealing with someone who knew how to wait, how to aim, how to hurt. I got an email a few days later from an anonymous burner account. Just 4 words. What do you want? I didn't respond. He wanted a deal. I wanted his silence to echo. I wanted him to sit with the fear that maybe someone out there had every secret he thought he buried, that maybe at any moment it could all be gone. He quietly resigned 2 weeks later, moved states, deleted his LinkedIn, tried to vanish, but I never planned on exposing him publicly. Some enemies don't need flames to burn. Sometimes the fear is enough, and with Clark neutralized, my network only grew stronger. More stories, more victims, more truths waiting to be unearthed, because in every shiny office, behind every closed door, there's another Riley, another Clark. And I was just getting started. By now, the backroom had evolved from a blog into a full-blown movement. What started as a whisper among the wounded had turned into a roar of the resilient. And it wasn't just employees anymore. It was contractors, temps, interns, even whistleblowers from within HR departments. They came to us with stories so twisted, they felt like fiction. A teacher fired for reporting harassment. A warehouse manager punished for refusing to fudge safety reports. A nurse blacklisted after calling out insurance fraud. Each one, a chapter in the same ugly book. And behind the curtain, the same playbook. Power protecting power. Systems built not to uplift, but to hide. That's where we came in. We became the light in the crawl space. Not saints, not heroes, just people who refused to stay silent. We helped victims gather evidence, prepare statements, and understand their rights. We partnered with legal teams who operated on a no-win, no-fee basis. We had digital forensics experts, privacy specialists, and even a few ex-corporate sharks who'd flipped sides after being chewed up by the same machine. But with visibility came danger. We started getting threats, fake legal notices, anonymous emails warning us to back off. Someone even tried to dox one of our lawyers. But we weren't scared. We were motivated. Because the louder they got, the more obvious it became that we were hitting the nerve. And then something wild happened. Other movements started reaching out. Labor unions, investigative journalists, even a few honest execs who were sick of playing the game. They wanted to collaborate, share data, build a shared map of corporate abuse across industries. One leak at a time, we were building the case for systemic change. And in the middle of it all, me, the guy they fired with an email. It's funny, right? They tried to erase me, but instead, they unleashed me. And as the backroom gained traction, I realized something powerful. This was bigger than revenge. This was a reckoning. And the best part? We were just warming up. There were still giants to confront, secrets waiting to be uncovered. But this time we weren't walking into battle alone. We had an army, not of soldiers, of survivors. Every movement has its tipping point, a moment where it stops being just another cause and becomes something that can't be ignored. For the backroom, that moment came with a whistleblower named Maria. She wasn't from tech. She wasn't even from corporate. She was a janitor. That's right, a woman who cleaned offices at a major pharmaceutical company. Quiet, unnoticed, invisible to the people in suits who barely nodded at her when she passed. But Maria saw everything. She cleaned conference rooms after private meetings, picked up shredded papers that were accidentally left behind, overheard conversations no one thought she understood. And what she discovered was monstrous. A drug trial cover-up. They had manipulated data, suppressed side effects, falsified patient records to fast-track FDA approval for a new antidepressant. One that had already caused harm, real harm. She came to us scared, shaking. She didn't even have a computer. She mailed us her notes, handwritten, dozens of pages, coded with initials, dates, overheard phrases, cleaned up documents she salvaged from the trash. It was raw, and it was explosive. I brought in every contact I had, medical legal experts, FDA consultants, investigative journalists. We spent weeks verifying everything, cross-referencing names, tracking internal memos. And when we were ready, we handed it off to the right people. 2 months later, it hit the news like a meteor. Whistleblower uncovers major pharmaceutical trial fraud, drug pulled from market immediately. The story went global. The company's stock nosedived, lawsuits poured in. The CEO resigned within 24 hours. The whistleblower hotline got so flooded they had to shut it down and reopen it under government oversight. But the true victory, Maria, she testified, brave, calm, clear. And because of her and the backroom, thousands of patients were spared. Lives were saved. I watched her speak at a hearing, standing in the same silence I once knew, and I realized this was why I kept going. Because sometimes justice isn't about getting even. It's about making sure it never happens again. That case changed everything. It turned the backroom into a beacon. Donations surged, volunteer numbers tripled. We started getting invitations from universities, media outlets, even international coalitions. But I didn't go. I wasn't doing this for applause. I stayed in the shadows, right where they left me, right where I work best. Sometimes I wonder if they had just treated me like a human, if they had just said thank you instead of you're done, would any of this have happened? Maybe, maybe not. But one thing's for sure, they made me. Not the version of me that smiled politely in meetings or stayed late to clean up someone else's mess. No, they made the version that doesn't forget, that doesn't forgive, that doesn't stop. They took everything from me, my job, my routine, my sense of purpose, and in return, I took their silence, their secrets, their safety. Now, every morning I wake up with emails in my inbox. Some are thank yous, some are cries for help. Some are people who've hit rock bottom, desperate for someone to believe them. I read every single one, because I know what it feels like to scream into the void and hear nothing back. But that's not their reality anymore, because the backroom answers. Sometimes it's just advice, a checklist, a contact. Sometimes it's more. We dig, we trace, we expose. We don't operate with mercy. We operate with truth. And truth has a habit of burning down anything built on lies. They called me a dinosaur once. Said I was outdated, but here I am, still standing, still fighting, still winning. And you know what? There are thousands more like me. Workers who remember everything, who've been stepped on, silenced, used, and they're done playing nice. They've found their voice, their proof, their power. They're the janitors, the assistants, the coders, the night shift operators. They're the ghosts in the machine. And together, we're not coming back for a paycheck, we're coming for reckoning. So if you're listening to this and you've ever been cast aside like you didn't matter, remember this. You're not weak, you're not crazy, you're not alone. And one day soon, they'll remember your name. Maybe not because you shouted it, but because you carved it into their downfall. Thanks for sticking with me through this story. If it hit you somewhere deep, if it reminded you of your own journey, don't stay silent. Like, comment, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe, because I've got more stories where this came from, and trust me, the next one, it's already on fire.